We can go ahead and get started. I'm Bailey Mizell, the director of PAC LA. We're here with Michael Hawley, our president. Kennedi Carter is our guest today, and we're here with Shoshana, and Armin's also joining us today. So thank you for being here. I'm going to give a quick little, breakdown of how today will run. And I also just quickly wanted to give a shout out to Kennedi for being here with us today and accepting our invitation and being open to talk to us about her work, her process. And I also want to thank Rose Shoshana and Rosegallery, and also Zoe Limonson, for heading their online curatorial process during this time. Zoe couldn't be here with us today, but we definitely want to honor her and shout out to her for making this possible as well. Another quick shout out to PAC LA's board of directors and our membership base for your ongoing and longstanding support, making PAC what it is today, and supporting the organization. And a little bit about today's presentation. We'll go and have a presentation for about 40 minutes, just going through some images and talking with Kennedi about her current process, the current exhibition at Rosegallery, their online exhibition, This Seems at Home, and Kennedi's process within the last year and overall. So I want to go ahead and give you a quick little intro to Kennedi. Kennedi has a primary focus on Black subjects. Her work highlights the aesthetics and sociopolitical aspects of Black life, as well as the overlooked beauties of the Black experience: skin, texture, trauma, peace, love, and community. Her work aims to reinvent notions of creativity and confidence in the realm of Blackness. Her work's been featured in British Vogue, GQ, The Fader, Essence, the New York Times, Men's Health, Time, Refinery 29, and has been honored as a recipient of British Journal of Photography's 2020 Ones to Watch and Pride Photo Award 2020. Her work's been featured in the 2019 North Carolina Arts Exhibition at Cam Riley, Photo Vogue Festival, National Museum of Art at Duke University Exhibition across county lines, and Photoville Festival in Brooklyn. Rose Shoshana founded Rosegallery in 1991. Her internationally recognized contemporary gallery is located in the renowned Bergamot Station Arts Center in Santa Monica, California. And the gallery is committed to the ongoing development, definition, and long-term conceptualization, preservation, and presentation of art collections. And now I just want to kind of quickly bounce over to Michael Hawley, let him give you his small introduction as well, and then we'll jump into talking with Kennedi.
Okay, thanks, Bailey. Thanks for that that introduction. And to Rose, thank you so much for helping make this for making this possible, and to Kennedi, of course, for being here as the star of the show. And I just wanted to say this work, which actually one of them is behind me right here that Kennedi did. And Rose will attest to this. I walked into her gallery. She said, "I have this new artist." I said, "I want that." Right, Rose? That's exactly how it happened. And it literally, it's like I seldom, I've ever jump on something like that, but it's so beautiful and it fits so well in my collection. Has a great sort of sense of calm, like it's like a calm collection of images, and this one fits absolutely right into it. And thank you for making it, Kennedi. It's beautiful. I just love it. So I just wanted to jump in with one thing, like we were talking earlier about before people got here, about the idea of the early part of your career. I mean, your career is very new because you're indeed very young, but one of the quotes that I read in an article or an interview that you gave, it says, "I make work that I wish I had seen when I was younger." And I love that idea, right? Because you're trying to change the landscape. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and a little bit about the early stuff that you did and what brought you to the direction that you're going in now.
Yeah, I started photography back when I was in high school, and I had taken it because I thought I would have been able to just fly through the course, but it actually was pretty hard. My teacher made us actually, I don't know, kind of just learn it, and I ended up liking it a lot. I think a lot of the curriculum that I had been looking at back when I was in high school was more centered around white photographers. So I guess more around college, I was doing a bit more of the work to find Black photographers, and in particular, I guess, Black women photographers that I was really inspired by. I think one of the images that I was most moved by was Carrie Mae Weems' kitchen table series. And I think that, and with this image in particular, I don't know, I just was really moved by it and how intimate it was and how personal it was. And I kind of wanted to make something, I guess, similar in the same vein. So I kind of made that image in particular behind you. Uh, I don't know, when I was going through something that was a bit personal, it was a breakup, and I don't know what exactly it was that I was trying to say with it. I think I was kind of using it as a cathartic experience with trying to, I guess, like almost cope with a loss,
Mhm.
and
Right.
I guess like kind of communicate that I still loved that person and probably will for a long time and still do. So yeah,
Mm.
I don't know if that answered your
It,
question. It's
it
a bit
does.
all over the
It's
place.
you know the atmosphere that you create in these pictures, and you know this is a couple, but you have also a lot of pictures with other couples and other family members, and you're able to create this. You can almost feel the air in the room, or the
Mhm.
heat in the room, like the lack of air in the room,
Right.
which I think is like a really remarkable thing. And I was saying this to Bailey the other day, like I almost feel them breathing, and I kind of turn around every once in a while because it feels it feels like such a living image.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about you know, about like the Carrie Mae Weems kind of intimacy is sort of family at kitchen table kind of intimacy, and the intimacy that I've seen in your work is not mother child. It's more like grown up family intimacy of grown people in the family. Can you talk a
Mhm.
little bit about that, about your place in your family and the way that you show family life in your work?
Yeah, I think I was really blessed to have family members that just appreciated the things that I wanted to do and left things up to me and just loved me no matter what. And I think just having that experience and knowing from them how love should feel and how healthy it is when it's given just correctly, I think that was a heavy influence in my work with photographing families and couples and just different, I guess, emotional dynamics, and knowing what I deserve and what other people deserve as well, and what other people should be able to experience. And I think that's something that I try to tap into with my work a little bit. It's almost like an ode to them and an ode to people that I've loved and love me as well. And I think that's kind of, it's when I make work, it's not like it's a direct pull or a storyboard from things that I've experienced. And it's more so just like a feeling or a mood board almost, but in a picture. So
Right. And
Ro-
oh yeah, sure,
No,
Michael.
you go ahead. You go ahead.
Just in, mass visual culture, right, and distribution of visual culture, I actually want to know a little bit about that intimacy process. In that, there is a limit to imagery of Black intimacy and Black
mhm.
love, right? So specifically on that subject, I wanted to kind of hear what inspired you to be able to, perform in that way as far as being a photographer, holding that
Mhm.
space in your work with your models, right, and being able to produce imagery of the sort,
Mhm.
right?
I think, yeah, I think just within my own dynamics, with my family and with my loved ones, just seeing different things that happen in the world, it's almost like we turn to each other for solace. I kind of describe it as like these like little air bubbles where you can breathe with people that care about you, um, and just, I guess, love you no matter what. And I think that especially now is important now more than ever, because there's so many things that are going on in the world. You had the heat of the Black Lives Matter movement happening last summer, inside of a pandemic, and you go on social media and you're doom scrolling constantly and seeing
Right.
all these terrible things, but being able to turn to someone and have that space where you can, I think, breathe. Essentially, I think that's even in that photo that's behind you, when you were
Mhm.
talking about how it feels breathing and living, it feels like an exhale. So sorry, I don't know what happened. Wait, did I do that? No. Okay.
No, no.
But But yeah, just finding places where you can exhale, I think is something that I try to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that, I kind of wanted to also shift to Rose to touch on that a little bit too, because Rose, there's clearly a transitional space as well from the physical to the digital
Right.
with exhibiting the exhibition. So I also kind of want to use that as a segue to talk a little bit about, you know, the oncoming of the exhibition. And then we can talk a little bit about, you know, your choice in curating with Zoe, you know, Kennedy's work for the exhibition. This seems a home, which is very on topic with, you know, holding space for intimacy in that space during this time, especially, right?
And at that point, let's show a few pictures of Kennedy's work so that to give the audience like a real sense after Rose finishes.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think one of, perhaps if you can say, you know, a gift that this pandemic has given us is that we've been able, or lucky, some lucky, let's say not everyone's been able to sit back and take this as a gift, obviously, but just a gift of time, because we're always so running from, oh, we've got to hang this exhibition, we've got to go to this art fair, there's so much going on, and everything it needs to have a beginning and an end point. And so this period of time, you know, it started with just being able to just take a breath and say, okay, what is important to us? What is important to the gallery? How do we want to connect with what's happening out there in the world and also in our world? We're I've always seen the gallery as a space to show, to present artists' work, but also as a community center in a way, a place where people can come and share ideas and artists can come and speak about their work. So that part of it was suddenly gone, but the desire to communicate and the desire to continue on experimenting is what led to these projects, these online projects. And I think the gift for me is that I got to meet someone like Kennedy and got to know her, and getting to know her more and more as time goes. And it opens, I mean, in a selfish way, it also opens my mind to new ideas, and my mind to seeing things in a different way. Because as Kennedy said when she was growing up, geez, I wish I had seen more work made by people who look like me or who are me, and I wish to be a part of that as well, in the sense that I wish I want to give a platform to people who haven't had a platform before. So that for me is a great gift in the midst of all the
Right.
pandemic and the craziness. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Kennedy, in that process, when Rose, you know, when you were approached by Zoe and Rose about being a part of this exhibition, can you kind of give any inside scoops to, you know, what you were thinking as far as what you put into the exhibition, what pieces you wanted to be a part of that concept?
Mm. I remember Zoe talking to me about, I guess, like closeness and intimacy being a thing within the exhibition, and wanting to stay in that vein. So I had this, I don't know, just work that I'd been developing over time that I hadn't really done anything with. I think a lot of the time I just make work and it just sits there until it's of use a little bit. So yeah, I think that's kind of how it ended up happening. And I was asked for like small bits and pieces of text to include as well. It kind of reminds me of like a zine a little bit,
Right.
but yeah, just online.
This is the online exhibit that we're looking at right now.
Yes, this is
Yeah.
Zoe's, I mean, Kennedy's work in the
Yeah.
exhibit, because it is a group exhibition.
Right.
And I do have some questions about that later on as far as, you know, the counter exhibited artists in the space, but
I'd love to show the audience some, maybe from that presentation that we talked about, where we can see more clearly the
Text and the image. Yeah.
the actual images. Like Bailey, the one that we
Yeah.
were looking at before.
yeah. Okay.
Is
I did
it-
have a question about
Yeah.
the text, but we can hop into the presentation.
I just wanted to ground the audience a little bit in Kennedy's work, because
Yeah.
it is quite new and not everybody has seen it.
Yeah.
And Kennedy, if you see an image here that reflects something that maybe what we were talking about just now, please feel free to jump in and just let us know what you're thinking.
Yeah, so I'll just do a quick walkthrough of this slide, and then I actually want to come back to it with Kennedy and walk
Yeah.
through it then. But maybe during this time, Kennedy, we can kind of talk about it, because I do actually like right now the absence of the text, you know, juxtaposed with the question that I have with the text. So, you know, how for you has the text that you have accompanied your work with, how does that frame the work for you? Your work is quite poetic, and oftentimes so is your titles, right? And you talked about how you're holding space for intimacy, and that's often translated through text and language, right? But I kind of want to talk to you about that. It's a lot of it's written out like very script-like as well, or very poetically. So kind of wanted to hear your insights to that. Like I said, a lot of your titles are poetic too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had been wanting to start screenwriting for some time, or just do script writing. And so I'd start it off and on, and then sometimes I would just overthink it and abandon it. And so I think when Rose hit me up and Zoe hit me up to, I guess, like form the text that will accompany the exhibition, I was like in this phase where I reached back out to the person that I was making the work about in the first place. And then, yeah, just things ended up, I guess, rekindling again. And so I formed a script loosely around a conversation that I had with them. And I don't know, it felt a bit like a full circle moment a little bit. So making work about the person, and then thinking or experiencing loss, and then I think just that person ending up, or things just working out. So that's kind of a bit of what the text that accompanies it is about. But I think with the titles that I come up with too, I don't know, I freestyle it a little bit.
Right.
And then sometimes they change over time. Sometimes they're more simple than others. But I always talk about with friends, even when I read or see a photo book and the title is really good, I love a good title. Titles will make or break so many things.
Right. When I was looking at the online exhibition and also your titles, you know, I was imagining it as a type of re-entry to the work, right? Re-entry into your process. Oftentimes, you know, when we're, you know, one theme in your work, there's many, but one theme that really stood out to me was the idea of healing, right? And not only holding space for intimacy and closeness, but also space for healing. And so I also like the juxtaposition of your imagery with your text in that way. Do you imagine your work being able to exist without that aspect at all? Or do you think that they are always accompanied?
Without the aspect of healing?
No, sorry,
Oh, sorry.
without text
Oh,
and
without
language.
text. I think
Yeah,
I think it can exist without, but sometimes text is needed to give context
yeah,
and just to know what someone's making work about. Because oftentimes it didn't just fall out of the sky. There's something that influenced it. But it's also, I
yeah.
think, a matter of if the artist wants to talk about it, and not putting out work until maybe you're ready to talk about it again and again, because that's often what happens.
Exactly. I just want to go back really quickly because, for example, you know, this one's titled and the next one isn't. And obviously, artists all the time we keep things untitled, but with such presence and life in your work, you know, that is a very curious thing to me. When you the decisions of not titling a work. I don't know if this is a weird question, but you know, what kind of goes into that process for you as far as when you decide in your titling? Sorry if I'm jumping in on the titles too long. I just it's dear to me. So
Yeah, I think sometimes I depend on a title if it's going to be feeding into another piece of, I guess, like an image that I've made before, or it's going to be a larger body of work. But I don't know. I think sometimes some things can be better just untitled and alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you ever imagine that, there's a performance aspect to your role as a photographer and the relationship that you have with your subjects, but do you ever imagine them as, you know, um, not stand-ins for yourself, but in that same mirrored relationship, right? So for example, that one piece that was called Veiled Valentine and you or Valentine Veiled, and you talked about how a lot of your work at the time was, honoring love or love that you had in that space kind of being reserved and saved. So I kind of wanted to ask about your relationship with your subjects and if they kind of stand in that space with you, that shared space and that mirroring, right?
Mhm. Hold on. I think you cut out on the end. Could you wait on
Oh,
my end? Could you repeat the end of the question?
oh yeah. So, with intimacy being very involved in your work, right? I was asking you about that space as far as like as the photographer and your performance as the photographer with your models. Do you ever find them not as a proxy of you, but that mirror, that space being mirrored? Them being a model for something that you're trying to work through yourself, or that you're communicating yourself. Like for example, the piece that was called Valentine Veiled, and you had talked about holding space in your work for love and a love that
Mhm,
you had in the past and addressing that love, right?
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes, oftentimes, I feel like my models are just a reflection of what I have going on in my head. And it's hard to find people that can, I don't know, I feel like directly mirror what I have going on, just what I'm picturing rather. But when I do, I feel like I often return to them just to do more work because it's hard to find that, at least on my end.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry, here. I wanted to open it up to Rose as well. I'm just talking, going on and
Oh, no,
on.
no, I'm enjoying this so much. I just was wondering if Kennedy, if you could speak a bit. I think there was only one image shown from the work that is presently on at the Raleigh Museum of Art, because obviously they closed, but your show, I believe, is still up there. I don't think they've had a chance to take it down, but the one image of the woman with the neck piece, I forget what you call it, but that whole series is so amazing, and perhaps we can direct folks who are watching this to the Raleigh Museum of Art site so that you can see more images. But um,
Yeah, I can go
if
ahead and send that link.
if we can go back to that image, but Kennedy, maybe you'd like to say something about that project because I found it profoundly interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, 1 second here. Let me pull that up.
All right.
You can start talking about it if you'd like, Kimmy. Let me just pull it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. That project I started, when did I start it? I think it was January of last year, and it was completely funded by Cam Raleigh. And yeah, it was one that I've been wanting to do after seeing a lot of Titus Kafar's work and after doing art history courses when I was in college and
Yes.
um, not seeing a lot of Black art included. And I was thinking about that alongside this idea of flexing and showcasing wealth and what the optics of wealth are and what wealth appears to be. And I thought it'd be interesting to reference, I guess, like just this Elizabethan time period in particular, because when you see a lot of those portraits that are from then, it was just even having a portrait like that was to just, I guess, showcase the fact that you have money or you look like you have money. So I don't know. I was thinking a bit about that and what I guess, I don't know, and what just having or looking as though you have wealth, what it means um, societally and how it's like, it feels as though it can be helpful, but I don't know. I think it can be just a bit damaging as well to the spirit to have to force a front or feel it or feel as though you have to. I don't know. It's something that I'm still kind of thinking through a little bit and wanting to, I guess, return to over time. I feel like my thoughts on the project evolve the more
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
know, each time I talk about it.
Yeah.
But mhm.
Yeah. Um, It kind of plays into a heavy theme that you've talked about, in a recent interview with Document. But just overall, from what I read about your work and what we've talked about, defying the image and the counter narrative, right? So, you have the canon, right?
Mhm.
And defying that image and that narrative counter, and with your, the counter lens is what I call your work. I think about that, the counter lens in that space. And I feel like that's very much what you're touching on here, right? Is reimagining that imagery and those roles and
Mhm.
those representations of power, and kind of redistributing them back to your peoples and different peoples too, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead, and you can say something, Kenny. I didn't mean to.
Yeah. So I think that's a good deal about what, I don't know, just what it was about, especially considering the fact that during this time period, most Black people in England at the time were slaves. There were even like legislature being passed to
Yeah,
kick Black people out of the country. And
right.
so thinking about what it means to see a Black person in a portrait like this, as well as um, if a Black person was in a portrait like this, it was oftentimes as an accessory. I don't know, it's just, I think it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, and also, sorry to just cut anyone else off that had a question, but also, the other side of that, which is you as the photographer, right? Staging and setting up this works, and having that role as the photographer, as a Black photographer too, right? Even back in that time, with the rarity of imagery and the process, and who had access to the materials and the things that develop these images, right?
Mhm.
Professionally.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's been also, I think many of us, I think Kennedy and I and Armand spoke about the movie that was on Netflix just recently, the one that was produced by, yeah, yeah. Um, and I wonder, we had spoken about um, how, well, it's kind of fiction, but we really enjoyed it. So, that line of having the Queen of England is Black. It was really fascinating, and but the issues that came up were also so interesting. I mean, on the one hand, it was very playful, and everyone was so beautiful, and then you kind of know that this never happened, right?
Mhm.
There were no Black dukes that we know of, and people of color weren't treated equally, or attended the same parties. So kind of it was interesting how you were doing this project before this movie ever came out, and I hope that the audience does go to the Raleigh, because they're at least, I think, 12 portraits, right? And they're quite large. They're mural size. I think
Mhm.
it would be fun to just see more of them.
So Rose, these ones that we're looking at now are mural size?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And one comment Kennedy made, we talked about showing them at the gallery. She said, but I want them so big. I want these really, really big. And I said, well, how big do you want them?
Monumental.
Yes, monumental. I think you said disrespectfully big is
Yes, disrespectfully large.
large.
That's how
Yes.
big.
So hopefully one day in the near future, we'll be able to show those disrespectfully large images.
Somebody from along those lines, somebody from the chat was asking, is there a place right now that you can see Kennedy's work in person?
There
Yeah.
will be very soon, where we have some prints coming that we're going to frame. And so I would say we're hoping for April.
Mhm.
And we'll be sending out notices, of course.
Great. And how about right around where you are, Kennedy?
Cam Raleigh. So this project is up at a museum. It's the Contemporary Art Museum of Raleigh.
Fantastic. Congratulations on that. That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really, I didn't mean to jump in with a question, but it was just, I just saw it. It kind of seemed to dovetail with what Rose was saying.
It's okay. I can't see the chat or anything when I'm sharing my screen, so thank you for that.
Okay.
And Armand just pointed out that if you want to come to the gallery, we have viewing prints of Kennedy's. So if one would like to, one can certainly just come on over.
Kennedy, kind of going back to what you're just talking about, as far as, representations of power and, that counter narrative. I actually wanted to ask you about in that process, since that is so, prevalent in our minds, rethinking the canon and, distributions of power and representation, what kind of decisions go into your process as far as like who you decide to exhibit with and what publications you want to work with? I know there's such high demand for your work right now, especially from your most recent projects with, Beyonce, British Vogue. So what kind of goes into your process as far as choosing the institutions or the publications that you want to represent your work, right?
I think it varies at times. I feel like oftentimes when it comes to editorial work, it's more so if the person that is asking to be shot or the person that I don't know, I'm being commissioned to shoot, if it's someone that I'm interested or inspired by or just would like to know, or if this person is someone that I don't know, I just feel like would just add just another level to my portfolio that I'd enjoy. I think when it comes to institutions and trying to figure out how to get in contact with them or who, I don't know, just who exactly to work with, I think it's more so a matter of what the institutions and I guess what their intentions are
Yeah.
with the work or with what they're trying to show, and as well as if I think it's also who's coming to me as well,
Yeah.
because institutions are a bit hard to get in contact with.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, thanks for that. I was just always curious about, that process and having to, the extra reconsideration of, that process in it. You had mentioned in a, I forgot which interview it actually was, but you made a point about, saying that you weren't going to move to Los Angeles or New York,
Mhm.
right? As like a statement point. And that kind of plays into the question I just asked. I just want to know a little deeper into that point because I was very curious about that comment.
Mm.
Yeah.
And big cities stress me out, to be honest. It's a lot going on. There are a lot of resources there, but I think just starting my career where it was in North Carolina, I feel like editors and a lot of just people in general knew that I was going to be where I was going to be. So I'm not planning on moving or going anywhere anytime soon. I think just coming out the gate with that kind of played into my favor a little bit. And I think
Exactly.
just a lot of my work is rooted in my southern experiences. So I think if I was to move, it would probably be to Texas or just somewhere in the South because I just love it here. So
Yeah.
That's where you started out, right, in Texas?
yeah, so my family's from Texas, and then we moved to North Carolina after my dad completed either seminary or getting his doctorate. I don't remember which one was which.
Right. We actually have a question about the current image
Mhm.
from Jan Sternberg. She said, "Can you talk about the look in the eyes of the Mariana photo? It's very complex. Did you direct her at all?"
No, she's just amazing. I met her when I was at the beauty supply store, and I don't know, I actually stalked her for a second because I was scared to approach her, but then I just pulled up on her and she agreed, and then we ended up shooting maybe a few months later, maybe 5 months later after that. Um, and yeah, she came to get her photo taken. We got her dressed up. I had someone make this wig because we wanted it to look a bit cheetah print. And yeah, it's hard to believe that she was just, I don't know, a woman that I met at the beauty supply store. She has really strong eyes. So I think that's what just played in me picking this image in particular.
Right.
Mhm.
So yeah, this is a good part, I think, unless Rose or Kennedy or Michael, you guys have any other input, or Armin. But I think now's a good time to open up to the audience as well for, any further questions. Please feel free to add your questions in the chat and the Q&A like you have. I want to kind of address some of the questions because they're piling up here. So if you guys are happy with transitioning, I'd like to do that.
Great.
Haley, I just wanted to point out one thing, because we haven't spoken about the new series that Kennedy's doing, which has to do with Black cowboys. And there wasn't one image, I think, in the presentation, but maybe after the questions we can come to it, or because I think it's such an interesting, it's so profoundly interesting for Kennedy in terms of how she came to that project. If
Yeah,
there's
absolutely. Let me pull up the image. You can feel free to ask Kennedy as you please, but I'll pull it up right now. 1 second. There's actually 2 images that would be great to view at that time.
Do you want to say anything about it, Kennedy? Actually, you're working on it right now. It's an ongoing project.
Mhm.
And how you came about working on it? How it
Yeah.
came to you?
I went to a trail ride when I was in Houston.
There it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was in Houston, and that was in 2018, I believe. Yeah, I think 2018. And yeah, I was taking photos there. Had gone out there with my family. My family has gone to trail, they used to go to trail rides quite a bit. And that was my first time going to one. And then after that, I kind of kept returning to just, I guess, wanting to shoot it with Black cowboys. And I would go, every time I would go somewhere, I would try to find a cowboy out there. And I've shot out in Philadelphia. So I found some riders out there called the Fletcher Street Riders. And they're based in Strawberry Mansion. Yeah, Strawberry Mansion, Philadelphia. And yeah, so I shot with them. I shot down in New Orleans, and I shot in Houston. So I'm working on shooting at a couple of different places, and I guess trying to get oral histories of um, how these people started writing, why they write, and what it means to them. And I think it means something different for every person, which is really interesting to me. But yeah, I just am continuing shooting with them, and I wanted a long-term project that I wouldn't mind returning back to. Um, and this was it.
Thank you.
Thanks for that question there, Rose. I did actually have this noted as far as wanting to know more about future projects that you have in mind, and how, this past year, you did mention how it had shaped your practice a bit, and, what are some processes or subject matter or materials that you'd like to future and kind of continue into your future process past just isolation. So I don't know if you can kind of expand on that a little bit more, or if you just kind of said what you wanted to say there as far as your future projects.
Mm, I think with my future projects, I think I want to continue on with my Flex series, but tap a bit more into rappers, and I don't know, including just various rappers in those portraits. I feel like that could add an interesting element to it. I think flexing and the idea of it was something that was coined by them. And
Yeah.
I just think that would be interesting to include that and have some more recognizable faces.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How was it that, I mean, just that dovetails, of course, into what I'm sure everybody knows already, but that you took the British Vogue cover of Beyonce, working with a celebrity versus working with these intimate family and
Dynamics.
personal things that you've done in the past. Was it a complete break? Was it scary? Was it fun? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Mm, I think it was a mix of it. I think when I got the uh, opportunity, it was my first editorial shoot. So I was used to doing more fine art stuff, and just doing what it is that I was wanting to do. And I don't know, it was a bit of a 180, having to form just and flesh out every single aspect of an idea and not go with the flow. So
Right.
it was a lot of like building mood boards and just building ideas and being intentional about every single thing. And but it was still fun. There was a lot that we just did and got done during those 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just on the subject of mood board, I know everything can be conceptual. We can talk about all the historical implications and representations of things and this and that, but your aesthetic. Can we just talk about your mood board overall? What informs your mood board? Your colors are incredible. Your lighting is incredible, right? How you frame your subject matter, your aspect ratios, and then even the scales at which you print. Can you talk a little bit about what informs your aesthetic and what develops your mood boards?
I'm still trying to figure that out. I
Right.
think it just changes constantly.
Yeah.
I think just in terms of scale, I think that can be something that's just, it can bring you into a photograph even more, make you feel like you're watching a movie. Um, I think, I don't know, I think that a lot of the work that I make is influenced by things I've either seen before or just encountered before as a kid. And I try to base it off of feeling a little bit. Um, so I don't know. I think it's funny because I feel as though my mood board is just mainly informed by mood and feeling
Yeah.
rather than just things. I don't know, just seeing a bunch of things, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And oftentimes some of our moods are consistent, feeling like you're always longing or feeling like you're always, in and out of love or something like that, right? There's always that space that does recur, there's a pattern there.
Mhm.
So yeah, let's go into some questions from the audience. I have an anonymous question here. So congrats, Kennedy, on the British Vogue cover. How did Beyonce become aware of you and your work? Was it through a contest or simply word of mouth?
Um, British Vogue had someone, I think one of the photo editors had DM'd me on Instagram and asked me for my portfolio. And so I sent it. And then a few months later, I was hit up again by them about a job. And it was very mysterious and elusive the way that they were talking about it.
Right.
And so I kind of figured it out after realizing how secretive it was. And then that I don't know, there's very little people on the planet that have the power to choose who's going to photograph them for an institution like that. So I kind of put the pieces together.
Right.
Mhm.
Another anonymous question here. When you view your images, are you always 100% confident / happy with the results? Or is there some self-doubt? If there's self-doubt, how do you overcome it, especially when digital has made it accessible for more people to do photography?
Hmm. Repeat the question one more time.
Yeah, so basically they're saying, are you always 100% happy and confident with the results of your process, with your images? And if there is any self-doubt, how do you overcome it?
I think that, yeah, I'm not always super confident about them.
Right.
I think a majority of the time I take photos and then I sit on them for a few months, that's sometimes a year. I still have pictures that are upstairs that I haven't even developed yet that are still just rolls of undeveloped film. And I just return to them later when I want to. I think part of it is I think it's less about people having more access to photography. It's more about how long you take to sit with an image that you're making that makes all the difference. Because I think, and I always connect this to music, but there's so much music out, and there's plenty of people that have access to music. But the best music is the people that sit on it for like 5 years and then publish it and take their time with it. Because most of the time, yeah, because most of the time, if you sat and you listened to something that you played like 2 or 3 years ago, you're gonna be like, wow, I hate this. Or you might love it. So
Right,
I think just give yourself time. That's my
right.
answer.
Yeah, there's always something to that process when you look back, and it's kind of scary sometimes when you're like, wait, this was really fire. This was really hot. This was like solid. Like, where have I strayed from that? And how do I
Mhm.
re-enter that? Right?
Yeah.
There's that other side as well. Um, oh, this is a funny question. Just Douglas, how long is disrespectfully large? As far
How
as your
large is disrespectfully large?
like
I'm
a
gonna
right,
say like a double 30 by 40. So that's like 60 by 80 or bigger. That's disrespectfully large. Mhm.
How have you worked with such large pieces, for example? Like, was that a new thing for you to try to produce such large
Yeah.
work, technically, I mean?
Because we used Phototech mural paper for it at the Cam Raleigh. And so I think the next time I try and experiment with it, I want it actually printed and framed and non-disposable. I showed Rose this photo or self-portrait of Renee Cox, and it was a disrespectfully large portrait. It was so huge, and it was framed, and they could barely fit it through the door of her gallery that they were about to show it at. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
This might be an interesting question, but with the other artists that are featured in the online exhibition, kind of wanted to hear your insight as far as the exhibition, Kennedy, overall. Like, were you inspired by some of the artists? Did they, inform your process as far as like choosing some of the work that you put into the exhibition? Since it is a group exhibition in a space that's shared. And the title of the exhibition is just so specific. The themes about the exhibition. This seems a home. So I'm just curious, like, as far as your thoughts on the exhibition, and not like criticizing it, but what kind of feedback or input do you have as far as the other works that are exhibited?
I really dig it. I think home
Yeah.
is different for different people. So I think it was interesting to see that interpretation with so many artists. I think, did Wayne Lawrence do one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Rose slid me a copy of his book, The Bronx Riviera. Is that the name of it? What is the name?
It's called the Bronx Riviera. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Mhm. Yeah, so I was flipping through that book, and there were so many images from it that I didn't realize were by him and I'd seen before on
Right.
Tumblr back in the day and
Right.
just in different places. So I really loved his in particular. It was so strong. There's so many images.
Right. I always found that exhibiting with artists that you are fond of or that are a certain caliber that you respect, being in the same room, it changes your mind a little bit. It makes you think about your practice differently, right? And informs
Mhm.
your process a little bit more too. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, sorry, I'm just rambling on, asking all the questions here. I wanted to open it up to anyone else. Audience, please feel free to continue adding your questions. Um,
So Bailey, could you go in the presentation that you were flipping through before to this? There's a picture, I think it's called Sheila's house,
mhm.
or it's the one with all the pictures on the wall and the ceiling. It's sort of an Eggleston-ish kind of picture.
Yeah, I know the exact one.
I just wanted to comment that, like, for me, it's, as a writer, you write what you know, right? Like, and I think that one of the wonderful things about your work, Kennedy, for me, is that it's very clear to me that this is like the one, that one, and the one afterward with the, I think it's right after it, that one, those two. It just seems like this is the world that you know so well, and it's so that, and because of that, these photos just ring to be so honest to me. I just love them. I can't get enough of looking at them. I just had to say that. I'm sorry to gush.
Thank you.
Could you talk about this one, the last one, the one with the
Sorry.
pictures?
Mhm. Yeah, where was I? I was shooting, what was it that I was shooting? I'm trying to remember. I just remember I was at one of my ex's house, no, their grandmother's house, and across the street, oh yeah, that's what it was. So a while back, I shot with Sheila's kids at like a 4th of July cookout. And
Right.
so I was dropping off these images that I got printed finally. And yeah, I gave it to them, and I was over there, and she opened the door to her house, and she had all these just different portraits of her family members and just heirlooms that were up on the wall. It just clustered everywhere. It was just, I don't know, just insane. And so I had these lights in my car that I just bought, and I asked if I could take some photos of her and her family in her house. And she said, yeah. So
Awesome.
I was just shooting the walls. I
Mhm.
think something that I love so much is how much photos and photo albums mean to Black families. It just helps you remember. Yeah, I think you just remember where you come from. There's high school diplomas up there, college diplomas up there, and you get to see just generations and how just where you came from. I think
Right.
it's so interesting to me, especially given that personally, I feel like just being an African American, my family tree is a bit scarce, and I don't know
Mhm.
where I come from
Right.
just generationally. So
Mhm.
being able to witness just family members that I didn't know and seeing them physically,
Right.
or just being able to put a name to a face is really interesting to me.
I
So
love that. Billy, could you go to the first photo in that group? It's of an older woman with a book that says, it's one of the first two pictures, that the
Yeah.
first one, actually, the first
mhm,
one, this one. And that's
yeah.
kind of what you're talking about too. It's sort of like, that's her, I imagine that's her husband in the picture or something like that.
Mhm.
Is that the story behind that one?
Yeah, and that was a good friend of mine, her grandmother, and I think she might have Alzheimer's, but she's losing her memory rapidly. And I wanted to get a portrait of her because she lives on a street that's called Justice Street, and it's named after her family, the Justices. So
Oh,
the
wow.
street she lives on is like named after them.
Oh,
And
wow.
her family is so interesting because and I'm a bit jealous at times because they lived in Durham their whole lives. The whole family has lived there. And even down the street, maybe 20 minutes, is the plantation where their family were enslaved at. And so we went to Stagville. It's called Stagville Plantation. It's one of the biggest plantations in North Carolina. And they grew tobacco there, I believe. And they have this collection of names in this book of all the people that were enslaved there. And it was just this long, like 2 pages worth of justices from the Justice family.
Mhm.
So I don't know, just being able to know her history is so interesting to me. And yeah, I just really think her family's so cool.
Yeah. The
Absolutely.
stories behind them make your photos sort of
Right.
even richer than they already are.
But even also just the incredible balanced light of this image,
Mhm.
and color sources, they become conceptual as well, as far as the subject matter and the story that you just gave. So, um, yeah. Um, Michael, were there any other images that you were particularly interested in talking about before we turn it back?
I'd love if you keep going down. There's a couple of images. This one on the woman on the so there's the bodybuilder woman, and then there on the opposite side of that row.
Oh yeah,
This one.
this one
I
is
love this image, and the one afterward, because it's sort of the one right after it, which I imagine is the man or the person behind her. Those two. Um, Can you talk about the color in these photos, the gold against the skin, and your thought process in when making these two?
Um, I made that back in, I think, like 2018, and that's when I started experimenting more with film photography. I
yeah,
was shooting digital pretty heavy, and I was trying to figure out just what I wanted my work to look like, and was aimlessly shooting. And this was kind of, I guess, like a byproduct of that. And I had lost the roll of film. I had the digital images from this, but I had lost the roll of film, and I cleaned my room because it was a mess. And then I found it behind my bed, maybe like a year later.
Mm,
And so when I finally got them processed, I was like, oh man, it kind of was a game changer in
yeah,
what I wanted my photos to look like, and in terms of tone and feel.
right.
Yeah, it kind of, and even I think just texture really, because his
yeah.
knuckles were so rough.
Right.
So I think it was just,
So,
it set a precedent for what I wanted my work to feel like.
because that's what I was thinking when I first saw them. I saw this direct line between this and the one behind me in terms of the atmosphere of the room and the skin tones, and I just think it's beautiful.
Mhm.
Yeah. Kennedy, do you mind sharing what you shot this on?
It was a Mamiya 645. That was my first film joint.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, I think we have a few more questions here. Sorry, I have to stop sharing to view, but I saw some more questions coming up here. Give me 1 second.
Haley, do you know if I ask a question?
Yeah.
Sorry,
So-
say that again.
Armand wants to ask a question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, hi, Kennedy.
Hello.
So really quickly, I think it's come up a lot. I think one of the,
We can't really hear you, Armand.
oh, sorry, hold on. Here we go.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Hello. So I think one of the things that seems to be coming up a lot within all the work and a lot of the conversation that we're kind of going around is like the ideas of vulnerability and ideas of power. And it seems to really repeat a lot of the more intimate photos. It seems like vulnerability takes that role, and especially this idea of power in the portraits. But I feel like the portraits hold this really special place because they embody both in this way of like, of course, they're exuding power because it's a statement of wealth, but then there's also this underlining idea of vulnerability because when you think about like the idea of historical flexing, like that's a way to, it's a way to fit in or make, okay, realistically, call a spade a spade. It was a way for Blacks to feel white in a way, you know what I mean? And so I think one of the questions I really wanted to bring up, and I know you kind of touched on this a little bit ago when you were saying this was exactly what you wanted your photos to look like. Was there ever a point where you saw something where you're like, this is what I want every like photo to underlining like say or like have the tone of? You know what I mean? Like, is there I guess, I don't want to say theme because I think that's so limiting. Like, is there a, you know what I mean? Like, is there something that you wish to pull from each image that you can say repeats?
Hmm.
Right.
I'm trying to think because it varies so much, but I feel as though, because it was like a question inside of a question, but you were asking me if there's any particular images.
Yeah.
Could it be mine or can it be someone else's?
Ooh.
I mean, it's in my idea, it's your show, so I would want to go yours, but I'd like to hear both of you. Like,
Yeah.
Let me see. I think not in terms of wanting it to look like, but just in terms of feeling and being able to know off of rip whose image is someone's is, I remember when I got Deanna Lawson's monograph, her work is just so niche to her. You see it off rip and you already know what's up.
Yeah.
I remember I saw it on her blood orange cover, and I feel like I don't want, it's not that I want my work to look like hers, but that ability for you to know your work so much and know what you want your images to look like so much that it's just, even other people are able to know off rip that's who that person is or who that artist is. That, and I think within my, I don't know, I think I'm still trying to figure out what I want my images to look like. Personally, I don't think I've come to the point where I'm able to know exactly what an image of mine looks like. And I think maybe that'll come in a few years because it's only my third day out here. But we'll see.
I think though also, Kennedy, I think you're closer than you think you are because there's this intimacy that you're able to contract with the sitter of the portrait or the picture that you're taking, where you're not, like the writer James Joyce would say, your foot is not in the screen, like it's not in the picture, but you're there and you can totally tell. And I can't see you there, but the person you're taking a picture of is not looking at you, but your presence is very much in every single one of these photos. And I think that's a really unique thing and a really difficult thing to achieve.
Michael and I spoke about that for like an hour when he came in to view the. Yeah.
we did, yeah. I'm just blah blah, right?
Lord, I'm hoping I'm able to see it soon because I don't know. I feel as though sometimes it feels a bit unconscious, but I'm hoping to get to the point where I know what is me, I guess, off the top of my head. And I don't know, it's kind of difficult to gauge it at times and separate myself from my work. That's why I'm so adamant about sitting on something before showing it to anyone and then returning to it later, because I think that's what helps me quite a bit.
Yeah. I think that shared space definitely translates though.
Mhm.
In your process. I actually have a question here, and then we're wrapping up soon, but I wanted to get to this one because it was about your writing. Uh, she said, Olivia said, really beautiful work. Thanks for sharing. I'd love to know more about your writing.
Mhm.
Which comes first generally? The images or the writing? It feels like it's in prose from birth form, perhaps, her writing.
Mhm.
Okay, so she's asking basically, what comes first, the images or the writing? And it says it seems like your work's mostly in prose form. Is that true?
Mhm. Um, it's typically the images come first, and I'm trying to figure out how to just write more. I remember my dad, he always is, and I mean, if you're this type of artist, I think that's just your thing. But he was always saying to me, you don't want to be an artist that doesn't write. And I was like, I remember a year or some years ago, I was like, man, I'm gonna do what I want. And
Right.
so now I think I'm really feeling the whiplash of that because I don't know, I think I was able to fly under the radar quite a bit when it came to escaping having to write and then put all my ideas together. I'd run away from it like they was the feds because writing can be so difficult when trying to get your ideas all together. So I think it's just become easier for me to make my work and then write on it once I have an idea of what it is that I'm trying to say. That makes sense.
That absolutely makes sense. Synthesizing is definitely a part of the process. I'm curious about the collaboration in that. If you ever collaborate with your subjects in the writing process, I think so. I think I saw some on the exhibition that was very exchange-like. Like I said, and you said, and it seemed like there was the exchange as far as language as well with your work. I'm going to go ahead and cruise one more time. Someone asked if you carry a camera with you everywhere you go.
Do I? I used to, but it got heavy.
Exactly. And then one more question, just because we're closing up here. I'll pull it up in a second, but this person wanted, some anonymous person, they wanted to see the portrait, the auto portrait of you having your head shaved, and wanted to know if you can tell us more about that image and the story behind it.
Great way.
Let me just pull it up really quickly. Oh, it's already pulled up. Perfect.
Yeah, so I shot that for New York Times when they did in the arts section, I think it's called Sources of Self-Regard, and having Black photographers do self-portraits of themselves. And I had been trying to, I feel like I had done a lot of self-portraits and trying to prepare for that. And then this was the only one that I felt was really strong about. And I think that's how they felt too, because they printed it just that was the only one they chose and they printed it really big. And I felt like that was the only way to go. Because like I said, I like those disrespectfully large images. And I think just something, and I think I said this before, but something like scale can make so much of a difference. It brings you in and you are just able to engage with something to the fullest extent.
Yeah.
My dad, he cut my hair all throughout the beginning of quarantine when my barber was closed. Um, and I mean, he didn't do a terrible job, but he was like, my neck was tore up, I will say that.
Ah,
But I was, I don't know, I was just taking portraits of myself and then I finally set this one up. I couldn't find my tripod anywhere, so I set my camera up on top of some books and then I had to position it in the mirror a bit and then I didn't have my glasses off because I didn't want to leave the house and go to the pharmacy to get my contacts. So I was so I had my dad focusing my camera for me and cutting my hair.
mm.
And yeah, that's how this picture came about.
I like that idea though. I like, you had mentioned, I think in one of an interview, but adopting new forms of rituals during this time too, and that being one of them. Also kind of tapping into that shared space, intimacy and family. So that was a good question, anonymous attendee. You've been asking great ones. If you're the same person, thank you. So I think we're gonna wrap it up here. If there's any closing statements from you, Rose or Armin or Kennedy, Michael, I'm going to give the floor to you for a moment to, close out if you have any other statements.
I'd just love to thank everyone, and Bailey, you're amazing. It was really
Thank you.
wonderful to get to know you on
Thank you.
whatever this platform is called, and Michael, as ever, the treasurer.
I'm such a fan. It's like blah, 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 fan. So thank you, Kennedy. Thank you for your work. It's beautiful.
Thank you guys for letting me today.
And all the members of PAC who, what would we ever do without you? We want to see,
Exactly.
we miss you. You're out there, I know, behind the screen, but we send you lots of healing thoughts and lots of light.
And thanks to all the PAC members who came today. And this is a platform that we intend to keep working with the online platform even after the fog lifts.
Yes.
And it's because it's enormously helpful, and it gives us a far greater geographical reach. So thank you very much. And Bailey, I'm going to throw it back to you, or maybe to Kennedy, you and Kennedy, just to close it out. Thank you, Kennedy, so much for being with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, thank you all for being here, making this a wonderful panel discussion. I enjoyed it. I was geeking out a little bit. So thank you, Kennedy, for your insights and speaking with us today. And I hope we can talk again soon. Your future is very big. And so I look forward to that opportunity, hopefully, and to following your work, right? So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And come in and see those prints, because I think just seeing them as Michael did, just having and being able to hold them in your hand, and the colors and the textures are so incredibly rich and vibrant. So I urge anyone who wants to just.
Yes. You should definitely do that. I mean, really, it's a different experience when you see them in person. And also, I just wanted to do another shout out to Zoe Lemelson, who did such an amazing job with that online presentation. It's really, really good.
Zoe.
We love Zoe,
Yeah.
and our best wishes to her. So, do you want to close out, Bailey? I think that we're out of time.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time. And Rose, we'll be in touch. I'm looking forward to meeting you.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kennedy. Thank you, Armand.
Kennedy, the light is changing on you.
Yeah, it's changing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, Kennedy, you came in, from North Carolina. So you're ahead of, so thank you for being here with us on your evening.
Yes, of course.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.